Mixed signals here. Good morning. This is the early edition of the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. We moved it up this month because our regular time conflicted with training for the legislative staff. We aren't changing it for the rest of the year. It's just for the month of May. And today is May 11th, 2023. Are there any changes to the agenda this morning? Do we have any public comment this morning? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Well, good morning. I see some familiar faces, but some new people and the technology. So it's been a long time since I've been here, so let me introduce myself. I'm Herb Engman. I'm currently president of the Forest Home Improvement Association.
Former supervisor of the town of Ithaca.
Former supervisor of the town of Ithaca and town board member for 12 years. So I'm here because of the recommendation of the town board last Monday. Last Monday, there was an item on the agenda to abandon a memorandum of agreement among the county, the town of Ithaca, and Cornell University to reconfigure the Craddock Lane Pleasant Grove intersection. Now this has been planned since the Cornell master plan was finished in 2008. They committed to doing it then. This recent agreement was because they were expanding the North Campus, and they said, well, we'll all agree to it, but there's a problem. There's been a proposal to abandon it. And the reason is apparently that the county manager of highways has said, well, look, there's been no increase in traffic because of North Campus build out, but that's not the point. The point is there was unacceptable traffic way back before 2008. So that has nothing to do with the issue. Beyond that, we understand that the reason was that the current configuration is fine for the traveling public. Well, the highway department can focus on the traveling public, meaning we assume motorists, but county government, town government has the responsibility to look at a much broader picture. What about cyclists? What about pedestrians? What about safety? What about the quality of life in the community? And because of that, we're here to ask that the county continue the memorandum of agreement so that we can get that reconfigured. Now, there have been some delays. It would have been done a couple of years ago, but it was found that there are some utilities that run underground there. Well, my understanding is that the town of Ithaca is going to take care of that before the county repaves Pleasant Grove later this year. And there were some suggestions for a roundabout or other types of things that weren't practical, apparently. But it still can be done. We can still agree on a reconfiguration. The problem is this, that right now people coming into Cornell come to that intersection and it looks like you should go straight, and that straight goes right into Forest Home, where they should bear right and go down Craddock Lane. That's always been the intent. So we need to reconfigure that intersection a little bit to get the traffic going where it should go. Now, the reason it's such a problem in Forest Home is that Forest Home was settled in the 1700s, fine for horses and buggies, but we've got a stream and we have steep slopes. That crunches the amount of space available for roads. We can't make the roads bigger. We have one-lane bridges. So everything converges there. And every time Cornell expands, we get more and more traffic. We complained when they built the parking garage on Forest Home Drive. And we said, that's going to increase traffic. Oh, don't worry, we're going to reconfigure the Craddock Lane intersection. So we've been promised this over and over and over again since before 2008. So we're here to implore the county not to abandon this. Let's just agree on the reconfiguration, Cornell has rebuilt the rest of Craddock Lane beautifully. All that's done. All we need is the intersection, and Cornell has agreed to pay for it. So let's do it. So we're here to ask for your help in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. On Zoom, we have Bruce Britton, also a Forest Home resident, I believe.
Yes, good morning.
Morning,
Mike,
Bruce.
nice to see you again. A lot of unfamiliar faces. I guess it's been a while since I've been there. I support what Herb said. And just a little background for those of you who are less familiar with Forest Home. We're a historic little hamlet completely surrounded by Cornell. Until recently, you couldn't get from North Campus to Central Campus without going off campus and through Forest Home. So back when, I guess it was in 2000, Cornell had a big residential initiative project, and they put in Craddock Farm Drive, which connected North Campus to Central Campus. In 2019, they had a enlargement of their residential development over there. And so the decision was made to realign the intersection of Pleasant Grove and Craddock Farm to divert traffic more readily down Craddock Farm to Central Campus. And that was an agreement with the town, county, and Cornell. I think recent traffic counts have shown that there's still the need for that. As Herb was saying, traffic goes into Forest Home, it needs to be diverted. Cornell did come up with some, at least preliminary plans. I know there were problems with those plans. Maybe Cornell's consultant did not keep everyone sufficiently in the loop as they developed the plans. In any case, for whatever reason, the project seems to have sort of petered out, and it would be nice to get it started again. We've got an agreement among the entities, and maybe this is the committee that would help get that moving again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Anyone else? I think that, yes, Greg. Sure.
I'm looking at the map right now. Is this right by Hasbrook and where it comes down the hill into Forest Home? Is that where you're referencing?
Yes.
Okay. I just
Yes.
want to. Okay. Thank you. Just spatially, I'm trying to get my bearings. Thank you.
We don't have anything on our agenda about this. The committee has not been briefed at this point. Lisa, I don't know whether you or Jeff want to say anything about this, but we're going to need to investigate this further.
Yes, I would leave it to Jeff. I know that the one area that he's planning on doing is conducting another traffic study, but I would leave it to him for further comment.
Jeff, are there any comments you'd like to make about this preliminarily?
Yeah, I think at this time, the only action being taken is to do another traffic count and see what the traffic flow through that area. And then based on those results, go from there. I'll brief the committee when we get those results.
All right. Shauna, I think that's your district, right?
It is, thank you. Interestingly enough, I was actually on the phone with Martha last night, and she had mentioned that this topic had come up many, many years ago about funneling some of the traffic that
You're
goes.
speaking of Martha Robertson.
Martha Robertson, yes. That this had come up many years ago, and they had talked about funneling some of the traffic around Forest Home instead of cars going through. One thing that she did point out as well is the fact that right now Freese Road is still under construction, and there could be some cars that are actually taking the route through Forest Home instead of going to Freese Road. So there could be some discrepancies, even if we were to do a traffic count over the next few months, because, you know, I think she brings forth a valid point in that I'm guessing some people are taking that Forest Home to get over to East Hill or to Route 79. So, but in hearing from Mr. Engman, it sounds like the traffic counts aren't really, for the most part, the concern. The concern is that they received information a few years ago, even as far back as 2008, and there's concerns for pedestrians and bikers that are going up and down that Pleasant Grove.
All right, well, thank you for that information. We look forward to a further report and update from Jeff in the future.
Thank you.
I don't have a formal chair's report this morning. Lisa, would you want to talk to us?
Sure, just a couple of updates. One, I wanted to speak to the capital budget, capital program. We, as you know, in county administration are in the midst of a budget software conversion to OpenGov, and that includes the capital budget as well. So the capital budget is now live in OpenGov, and departments are working on their specific projects that they want to bring forward. We'll be meeting with departments in early June, and we'll be bringing the capital program to F&I committee later in the summer for review and further discussion. The only other thing that I would mention as an update is at the last special F&I committee meeting, there was consensus that a plan would be put together about the center of government and related options. And staff has convened and are working on the components of that. We don't have it in time for today's meeting. It was a little too tight a turnaround, but we're working to have that completed for the June meeting.
Okay. Questions for Lisa? Randy?
Thank you, Lisa. Does the county own any properties that we're leasing out space in?
Where we are leasing out to others,
Yeah.
the only space that I can think of off the top of my head, Center for History and Culture. And in the downtown mental health building, there's a floor of that building that where Alcohol and Drug Council.
Okay, right, all right. All right, thank you.
Anything else for Lisa? All right, let's go to transportation planning. Dwight, Frank, you want to come up? Come on up and have chairs. Thanks again, Herb.
Good morning.
Good morning. The old and the new.
Oh, thank you. Let's deal with the two resolutions authorizing grants, federal transit.
Talking about B and C on our agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you want us to go ahead, move those forward at this point, and then you talk about them?
Sure.
Someone want to move Resolution B, authorizing Federal Transit Administration, Section 5307, Urban Formula Grant for Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit. That's ID 11683. Greg moves it. Randy seconds it. Go ahead, Dwight.
Okay, great. This is a grant that only has one project. The project is a $1.4 million operating assistance project for TCAT. And it's been transmitted to the FTA for their review, and then they'll get back to us when they ask us to submit it. But this is something that TCAT had requested of the county, and the money's there to use it, and they need it.
Randy?
So it's just basically part of their operating budget? Is that-
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Anything else? Are we ready to vote? Those in favor? That's unanimous. Then we have Resolution C, authorizing the Federal Transit Administration Section 5339 Bus and Bus Facilities Program Grant for Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit. That's ID 11682. Greg's got his hand up to move it. Is there a second? Randy? Go ahead with this one.
Okay. This is a grant that will plan and it'll do the architect and engineering work and begin the rehabilitation of TCAT facility. The TCAT facility is 31 years old, and there's major elements of the facility that had not really been worked on during that time period. So for example, the concrete garage floor would be replaced. There's work on the flat part of the roof of the facility, which there are leaks that are continually being patched. The IT server room is too small for all of the servers that need to be installed, and the electrical utilities need to be upgraded to accommodate that use. And over where I call it the operations wing, but where the driver's lounge is and their restrooms and shower room and locker room, there has been no either upgrade or rehabilitation or work done over this time period, and they have very significant utility issues that need to be taken care of, and the shower and everything else. And the other thing is back when we built the transit center, the needs between the male and women bus operators, there were fewer women operators than there are now, and so that wasn't really planned for at that time relative to accommodations. So all of these things would be taken care of, and plus they get a new floor surface, and there a lot of things new. So 1992 is over, and we really need to have something nice there. So the budget is 90% is federal and state funded, and 10% is local. And there will be future grants for this purpose, because the replacement, if it comes down to the replacement of the flat roof, that will be in addition, that will be taken care of with a future grant.
Questions? Randy?
Thanks, Dwight. So I'm looking at this resolution, and it says that there's money from 2020, 2021. Is this money that has been put aside for this project, or is this just an accounting process?
This is the 5339 program is strictly for bus and bus facility capital funding. So this is something that's been saved up, and it was the priority was brought to the attention of the county by TCAT, and so we're looking to allocate the monies for this. The 2020 funds, it's a priority project for the FTA to approve our application because these are lapsing funds in this, at the end of this current federal fiscal year. So the FTA gave, they asked all grants with lapsing funds to be completed by the end of May, and so that's what we are doing. And getting the resolution is part of that process.
Great, thank you. Who manages the facilities at TCAT? Is there an individual, or is it, how does that, I'm just curious, it's not Arel's group, it's a separate entity?
It is, TCAT has staff under their general manager, Scott Vanderpool.
Okay, all right, I was just curious, thanks.
Liked your list of what some of the projects are. I was kind of hoping to hear that maybe they wanted to refinish their tables in the meeting room. That would be a nice thing.
Yeah, there's been a lot of use, hasn't there?
Are we ready to vote on this? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
Sean, are you voting? Have you appointed yourself to the committee?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Do I need to make that official, Mike?
You should state that you're doing that.
Okay. I would like to appoint myself to the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, and we'll be voting today. Thank you. As a temporary member. Thank you.
Jerry gets to do that.
One and done.
Let's go back to Resolution A, Transportation Budget Line Item. That's ID 11686. Any questions about that? Someone want to move it? Greg moves it, Randy seconds. Any discussion on that? Greg?
A revenue increase? Or what's the?
Sure. So we've, based on the FTA's recommendation, we created 2 new positions. And in speaking with Dwight, we wanted to make sure the budget was up to where we needed it to be so that when Dwight writes the grant that will be presented to you in June, that we have all the federal and state funding in the grant because 90% of it's covered. So it's just a movement of lines and adding of the 2 positions.
Randy?
Is this also, I think this was discussed before, a moving of the actual position to the Planning and Sustainability Department? Okay. Okay.
All that was budgeted, right?
Right.
Vote on this one? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, gentlemen. Harry, you're up next.
All right. So we have a resolution, but before we get to that resolution, I think a short presentation might be in order here. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about primarily our electricity supply contract that needs to be renewed, but I also come bearing ill tidings on rising energy costs. So I think the subtitle of this presentation is Don't Shoot the Messenger, and you'll see why soon. So just as a quick primer, and this is something that I talked a little bit about in January that you might already understand, but just to lay out the groundwork here, energy bills have 2 different pieces. There's a delivery portion, which has a lot of fixed charges, your demand charges, transmission charges. It's determined in a utility rate case, which we're going through right now. It's not something that we have control over. It's not dictated by the market. It's through a regulated process that's done with the Public Service Commission. And then there's the second piece, which is the supply charges. And that is something that is variable. It can change. In New York State, you can contract with a third party or you can default to your utility, which in our case is NYSEG. The county for many years has decided to partner with with Mega, and then Mega has in turn chosen to partner with Constellation. And so we've received our electricity supply from Constellation. So, and both of this applies to both electricity and natural gas. On the natural gas side, we've partnered through Mega with a company called Direct Energy for our natural gas supply. And that's basically what this page right here says. I jumped on top of myself a little bit. So the Constellation contract that we have right now expires in November of 2023. And our Direct Energy contract actually expired last year. And it expired actually in February of this year. And so we renewed it last year, and it'll go until January 2026. So with energy markets, it's all about natural gas. Whether we're talking about natural gas specifically or we're talking about electricity, natural gas is the dominant factor. And so what drives the prices? A lot of it is weather. So if you have a warmer than predicted weather, people are using less natural gas supply is more abundant. It generally brings down the prices a little bit. Contrarily, in the summertime, if it's a really hot summer and we're using a lot of natural gas, the peaker plants are running in order to provide electricity on those days when everyone is running their AC, that drives electricity prices up. There's the economics. So right now we're in a period of high interest rates, cost of capital is high. Folks are less likely to invest in projects that create more natural gas, create more electricity, so that can have an effect on production. So natural gas production is holding pretty steady right now. That's something that can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. And in this case, it's not really doing us any favors. Natural gas storage can have a big impact. So right now, natural gas storage is a lot higher than one would expect because of the warm winter. Normally, after a really cold winter, the natural gas storage is down low. Everyone has to buy the gas in order to fill their storage back up, and that'll drive prices up a little bit. But with the storage being higher than expected, that actually works a little bit in our favor. And some of this has to do with the geopolitics. So obviously, the situation in Ukraine, folks are looking for natural gas in all different types of places. A warm winter in Europe can impact prices. And really, the geopolitics have an influence on trade. And this, I want to highlight, is the factor that what I've heard, what I've read, and what Constellation, Next Energy, which is an advisor to Mega, have told us that this is really what the driving factor is right now for the rising electricity costs. And that's that U.S. liquefied natural gas exports are expected to double. And right now, the only thing that's holding them back from rising as quickly as they would is that the ports don't exist in Europe and Japan and some of these other places to accept as much natural gas as they would want. So for a long time, all of that liquefied natural gas was staying here in the United States. We had plentiful gas, and that made prices cheaper. Now that we're starting to export it, that gas is leaving. It's going to start driving prices up here. So you can see right here, this is kind of a chart that shows where prices have been throughout the last few years, where they're expected to go. That green dot that's rising upwards is kind of the upper bound. The lower green dot is the lower bound of what we're expecting. And that little circle right there is where our last contract for electricity came in. So you can see we hit a pretty great spot in 2020. Where we're at right now, it's a little bit higher. But if you're looking at that upper bound, it's expected to go even higher. Yes, there's the lower bound where that's kind of a best case scenario. That middle line is maybe that middle of the ground, what we're really expecting. So it's still expected to rise, maybe not as precipitously as that upper green bound, but we're still expecting rising costs over the next few years. And this is kind of another chart to indicate that same thing. So this right here, we're looking at that bottom left square. That's the best representative of New York State and where we are. 2020, once again, hit a great spot. Locked in for 3 years. We've been pretty insulated from rising electricity costs with that low rate. Now we're looking at 2024, costs are higher. Our electricity rates are going to go up. But we're looking at those next few years, they're expected to rise a little bit and stay pretty steady. And so for this reason, we're really talking about signing another 3-year fixed contract and saying, okay, we think that we're getting in at a pretty good time. We'll lock in a rate that'll keep us pretty insulated for the next 3 years. It's what we did 3 years ago, and it served us pretty well. So we're happy with that. At the same time, though, as I showed, we had a really low rate, and we've had a really low rate for the previous 3 years. And so what we're expecting is in this new contract to go from a rate that was about 5 cents a kilowatt hour to around 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's about a 59% increase in just our supply costs, but we're also expecting some increases in delivery. So normally that 59% increase in our supply costs would only really have a 32 to 37% increase in our electricity bills. But because we're going through a NYSEG rate case, we're expecting to hear news of that in the upcoming months, and we'll give you an update when that comes out. We're expecting the rates from the delivery side to also increase. And so what this is going to mean overall is that our total bill for electricity from this year to next year is likely looking at a 40 to 45% increase, which is significant. So what does this mean for our bills? I have a couple of examples here. 2023, you can see the courthouse, a bill that we got in 2023 that was $1,700. In 2024, it's going to be about $2,400. So that's a 43% increase, about $740. Another example from our airport, this is kind of the upper bound. This is one of our big electricity users. A bill that would have been about $8,600 jumps up to about $12,500, so almost a $4,000 increase. So we're going to see this across all of our facilities, unfortunately. So the budget impact on the electricity side, these are the 5 departments that have electricity bills and that have a budget line in our electricity, or a budget line that says electricity or electric. Looking at a 40% increase, it's about $335,000 more if we're budgeting the same amount. And then if we're looking at a 45% increase, which is that upper bound that I'm estimating, it's closer to $380,000. So that's the electricity side. Unfortunately, I don't have better news on the natural gas side. So when we signed our new supply contracts for natural gas, it was actually a 70% increase in natural gas prices on the supply side. The rate case is also going to impact the natural gas side, probably not as much as the electricity side. We expect a little bit of a lower increase on that side, but still overall right around that 40 to 44% increase. And so again, these are the budget impacts. Facilities and highway are the 2 departments that have what we see in the budget is called a heat line that represents natural gas. So we're looking at going from a spend of about $162,000 in 2023, that if we were to budget the same amount of usage in 2024 and penciling a 44% increase, we're looking at about $234,000 to budget that same amount. So the overall budget impact, depending on whether you want to go with the lower bound or the upper bound, $400,000 to $450,000. So not great, not good news, unfortunately. It's just kind of where we are right now with energy. But there are some reasons for optimism. So we talked a little bit about weather earlier in terms of determining prices, but it has a bigger impact than that. So weather is really the biggest factor in energy spend, because weather is going to decide how much energy actually gets used. This past winter, as you know, was a milder winter than what we would normally expect. So we spent a lot less on heating than what we would normally expect to spend at that point. In a mild summer, a summer that isn't hitting 90 degrees and above for many days on end, many hours on end, that has lower what we call cooling degree days, that ends up being less electricity spent, less electricity used, and so that can really drive it. So if you look at this chart on the right, you can see, and thanks to Norma for helping me put this together, you can see how much we budgeted in each of these years for both electricity and natural gas. And you can see that some years we spend more and some years we spend less, and it can vary pretty significantly. And all of this comes down to the weather. A good year works in your favor, a bad year obviously doesn't. So some reasons for optimism: we could be lucky in some respects. This mild winter helped. If we have another mild summer, it'll help out as well. The other reasons for optimism is kind of what we showed in the chart. We're locking in 3-year fixed rates. That can really help us out if electricity prices and natural gas prices continue to rise, as we expect that they will. What I've been told is after 3-4 years from now, what we're expecting is hopefully a leveling out as some things start to happen. So on the electricity side, as we start to see some offshore wind get developed off the coast of Long Island and off the coast of the eastern seaboard, we're somewhat hopeful that that'll help add additional supply and help drive the markets down a little bit because there'll just be more plentiful electricity. Similarly, hopeful that transmission lines, battery storage, some transmission lines coming from Hydro-Quebec will help out in that respect, but that's years away in the future. And then the last reason for optimism is that we do have ways to mitigate our electricity bills. So energy efficiency is a big piece of it, and that's something that we're already doing with the Green Facilities Project. So that's really going to have an impact on lowering some of what we would have normally spent, switching out to LED light bulbs, making sure that our buildings are tighter, that we're being more efficient in how we're using the electricity and the natural gas. I think those can definitely help. But the flip side is also if we invest in that self-generation. And so we talked about this before with the hydro facility that really helps out in a lot of cases, but investing in things like solar, and we'll talk about solar carports later on this year, stuff like that can have a real big impact in how much electricity we're using. I mean, every kilowatt hour that we self-generate is one less kilowatt hour that we then have to buy from the grid. So it can really help us out in that respect as well. So, wish I came with better news, but we wanted to make sure you were aware of this as we kind of move towards budget season. So,
Thank you, Terry. That was a somber report, but it's very timely. I'm sure Lisa had her ears perked up. She's working on our budget. And I think the point that you made is that the policies that we support for other reasons, and that's climate change, are costly. And we're going to have to pay for it if we're going to support this and do what we have suggested doing, trying to get off fossil fuels. And the state is moving in that direction as well. We can't expect it to be any cheaper. I'm glad it might level off at some point, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that one either, because we've shut down power plants upstate. We haven't seen the investment in the transmission lines that there ought to be. We know where there's still bottlenecks. And there's a huge demand downstate that is there. We're lucky to have some of the power coming in from Niagara Falls. And we do know that there are nuclear plants, whether we like them or not. But if we want to go green, we got to pay for it. Anyone else? Randy?
A lot of information there, Terry. I actually was online looking at some of that stuff. It's tough to read. I mean, it's a lot of guessing going on, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen. The current contract with Constellation it's a 3-year contract. Are they the only viable entity?
So they're not the only viable entity. The way it works is we partner with MEGA, the Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance, and they go out to bid periodically. And when they go out to bid, they look for all the different energy service companies that are willing to supply them based on how much they're projecting to use. And in the last few years, Constellation has won the bid, and then it's gotten re-upped several times. And so through MEGA, we are able to then get that pricing from Constellation. We don't necessarily have to go that route. We could explore other options. We could try and put out a bid ourselves to try and find an energy supply company. There's a couple of issues with that. One issue is that MEGA aggregates a pretty wide body of counties and municipalities, and so they just have a larger load that they're looking for. And so it's kind of that bulk purchase idea. By having so much more electricity, they're able to get cheaper rates. In talking with a couple of different counties across the state, so Ulster County did this a couple years ago. They left MEGA. They were with NYPA for a little while, had some billing issues. NYPA wasn't able to re-up with what they needed, and so they actually went back to MEGA this year. And so we could explore other options. It just seems from talking with other folks that this is pretty much the best that we're going to get at this point. My understanding in talking with MEGA is that they're going to be looking to either possibly rebid. I think their current contract with Constellation goes through 2026, so they'll be doing either a rebid or a re-up, and they'll look at the factors at play in terms of can they get a better price or not. So that might be a chance for us to take a look at it at that point.
So they're bidding a flat rate for the next 3 years.
Yeah, they offer us a fixed rate.
So do they, if, I know some contracts I've done in the past, if your expenses go over 20% or whatever it is, you have a right to renegotiate. Is that a similar?
No, that's the risk that you take. I mean, there are some things that we could do. If there was the appetite for it, it would be staff intensive where we could, I talked about this with Next Energy a little bit. We could put a portion of our electricity essentially on a fixed contract and then leave the rest of it variable and leave it with NYSEG. You would then just have to do a little bit of active management where if it got too crazy with NYSEG, you would then have to try and find a way to get back on a fixed rate, and the fixed rate will be higher at that time. Quite frankly, I don't have the capacity or really the know-how to manage that. So if that's something the county would want to explore, we'd have to find someone to do that on our behalf.
That doesn't sound like a good idea, so I agree with that. And another question I have, so we're converting like the highway department to all electric.
Yeah.
So I imagine our demand cost is going to go up. So is that factored into this?
Not entirely. I mean, that's one of the things. As we transition some buildings from electricity to natural gas, we're going to see shifts in how things are spent. And so one of the things that I've talked a little bit with Norma, at least, is does it make sense to keep budgeting electricity and natural gas separately, or is there some way to combine them under a utility name that gives some openness for how things are spent? What we did when we did the green facilities project and we did the analysis of the public works facility is we looked at if we were to go to natural gas to electricity, what would that do to our utility bills? And even factoring in that increased demand charge, it does come out pretty close to even. It's probably a little bit more in the electricity spend entirely because of the demand charges that you were talking about. And what we're thinking about is, are there ways to try and mitigate that? So the county's looking at, is there battery storage that can help mitigate some of those demand charges? If our peak is only for an hour a day, if we can bring it down in that hour, it can save us a lot of money. And so that's something that we're looking at. It's just hard to estimate until we kind of know what the building is doing. So we kind of need a year worth of data from that building to understand where are the peaks happening and when are they happening.
It's regarding wind power.
Yeah.
If you guys follow all the whales that are washing up on the shores, and it's because of the wind turbines, in my opinion. We'll see where that goes. And maybe actually because of the way they're installing, they're vibrating the ground and pounding into the ground, and maybe that, whatever, the noise, something's really affecting the whales. So I think whales are important too. I had one last question, I forgot what it was.
Go ahead.
Oh, I do, I remember. So NYSERDA made a presentation about the landfill in Dryden a few months back.
Yeah.
Where's that at? And I know we talked about, is there value in the county owning that?
Yeah, so we actually just met with NYSERD about this last Thursday. I'm going to be talking with Lisa in a couple weeks to give her an update, and then I think we'll be taking it to, I think maybe Peak or F&I next month to give an update on that situation. But I'll just say all signs right now are pretty positive on that moving forward.
Greg?
Yeah, Randy, that was going to be my question. But if we were to do a project like that, where the county had a solar field or farm like that, what would that have as an impact on our energy costs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So some of it just depends on how that contract with whoever it was would be structured. I mean, there's a couple of different pieces of it that could have an impact. If we lease the land to someone, those lease payments can be coming back to the county. How the legislature wants to spend that money is obviously your prerogative. You could put it towards the energy bills and say, hey, we're leasing solar, so we might as well use that for electricity bills. The other side is if we were to sign a power purchase agreement with a solar developer, including either the one that was building on Caswell or a different one, that would give us a chance to get a rate that was another fixed rate, so to speak. And so if we could find a cheaper fixed rate than what we get through Constellation, that would be a benefit to us, right? Because that would be us buying cheaper power in a sense. And so that would be an option that we could explore once we get to that point and say, okay, when the developer puts it in, it's a fixed asset, right? It doesn't need shipments of coal or natural gas or anything. So once it goes in, they can amortize the price. And normally, the levelized cost of energy from solar tends to be lower at this stage because prices have come down so much. So our hope would be that we would be able to get a cheaper rate by partnering with them. We'd have to see what that looks like ultimately.
And then your analysis of 400 to 450,000 as an increase on the 2024 budget assumed no change in usage.
It assumes the same usage as 2023. We know there are some factors that are going to change it. Randy already alluded to it. We know that our natural gas usage, at least in the public works facility and in the mental health facility, are going to go down, and they're going to be then taken up by electricity. So those two lines are going to shift. The analysis that we'd gotten from Johnson Controls shows that to be pretty neutral. So I didn't want to try and estimate how much it's going to increase and try and mess around with the numbers. It was just cleaner to go, sure. If we expect the usage to be the same from 23 to 24, it will change. My suspicion is the numbers will still be similar. It'll just shift where the spending should go from heating to, from heat to electric.
And any of the other green facilities projects or programs expected to have an impact on lowering?
Some of the energy,
that's one that shifts.
Yeah, a lot of the energy efficiency work that we're doing, so all the LED light bulbs that were installed are going to make us use less electricity. Some of the transformer upgrades, hopefully some of the work that's being done with TEG, looking at the circuit breaker boxes, making sure that there's no hot circuits that are using undue electricity and just converting it into heat. I know Aurel's on here, so Aurel, if there's anything that I'm forgetting that you want to jump in and mention, but a lot of the controls optimizations should hopefully have an impact as well. Doing some more scheduling, making sure that lights are going off when no one's around, that we're cooling buildings, or bringing down set point temperatures when people aren't occupying spaces. I think some of that stuff will happen as well and hopefully help reduce how much electricity is used. To what extent, it's hard to know, really.
So will we see any reduction in usage in the 2024 budget? I know that's a tough one for you to ask.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
More of a statement, hoping that we would see reduction in the 2024 budget. But I would, Lisa, Norma, Aurel, yourself, if we are making these investments and we are supposed to see a savings by some of these investments, understanding the rate is the increase, but we should see some sort of usage decrease rather than holding flat and sort of not knowing. We should be able to kind of drill into what the return on these are.
The issue with energy, it's such a complicated thing. Something that we haven't even talked about in this is we're also adding electric vehicles to our fleet, and those electric vehicles are often on the same meters as the buildings themselves. And so trying to isolate, okay, we did an energy efficiency project on this building, we're expecting energy to go down. Oh, but wait, we also gave them an electric vehicle, now that's impacting it. Trying to understand kind of how to factor in all these different layers on top of each other it takes a lot of time. And we just don't have the time to do that. I think we can do some analysis of that and try and give Lisa the best numbers to work with. And we'll continue to try and do that as we move towards the operations budget.
Do the electric vehicle charging stations allow for tracking of usage? Like, is there any data that's given so that, we can look at that comparison between?
The ones that we currently buy do not. It's something we could certainly explore. The one station that allows us to do that is the charging bank that's at the public health department is on its own separate meter and circuit. And so it has its own electricity bill that we get from that. And so we can see how that impacts things. And, we can also look at how the vehicles themselves are being used, and so we have telematics in a bunch of these vehicles, and so we can know, okay, so this vehicle drove this much, we expect this amount of electricity to have been used. And in some of the vehicles, we can actually know how much electricity they have taken from the grid, so we can use that as a proxy as well.
Interesting. And then the one last thing that I would say is I would not necessarily be in favor of combining the electric and natural gas line items, just because I think it's important for us. Because somebody's going to ask the question at some budget meeting or in some review, well, what did we spend on electric versus natural gas? And then somebody's going to have to go back and sort of parse that out. So I think probably makes sense to do it that way, even though it may be slightly more complicated.
Let's take Shauna, and then I'd like to get this resolution so we can move on. Shauna?
Yeah, so my family actually converted to solar, oh gosh, about 3 years ago. And it's interesting because there's certain things that we see in our monthly from NYSEG. And some months it'll be really high, some months it'll be really low. Sometimes my wife totally freaks out and is like, we're paying triple that we used to. And so it's really hard with the budgeting process that NYSEG, the bills that we get. The other thing that I found is interesting is that with electric cars, like they certainly use, we're seeing our electric bill go up like $100 a month, but the reality is that I probably would have spent $800 in gas. And so, I think it's hard to compare just, the natural gas, the electric, because there's also, whenever gasoline is $3.50, $4 a gallon, there is a cost savings there. So, as to Terry's notion of like, it's really hard to compare because it's not apples to apples. And, for my family personally, we were willing and we were able financially to make the commitment to go green, and I think the county, while I understand we're all trying to be very conservative about tax dollars, I think there is that commitment, to try and balance being frugal and conservative with tax dollars, but also making sure that, we're doing the right thing by our constituents and by the future people that live here and want to stay on this earth and have clean air and fresh water.
Yeah, and I fully support that. I think it's important to know, especially because it is tax dollars, to be able to draw that comparison. One thing you made me think about is, are we charging our electric vehicles during peak periods? Is there a way that electric vehicle chargers could be set to charge off peak, so there's not the demand things? Those are the type of questions that I know are very complicated. We've got a very large organization, but being able to drill into some of that, I think, is just, as fiduciaries of the pots of money we're entrusted with, is important to talk about, right? And being able to explain to the public that these are complicated and here's why we necessarily can't do that. And yes, we do have gas savings, but I'm all for it. But please don't take it that way. I just want to make sure that we're able to have the data in the conversation as we continue to see energy prices rising. Hey, but you know what? Here's what that investment has saved us, with other things. I just think that's important to draw the comparison.
Yeah. Thank you. And this has been a really good discussion because it's going to cost taxpayers money. And Greg likes to drill into things. It's a wonder he's not a dentist. I'd like to put this resolution on. I'd like to change the title, however. I'm going to suggest the title be changed as follows. Resolution authorizing county administrator to sign contract for electricity procurement with Constellation Energy Supply. I think that better states what the resolution is about. If that's all right, would someone move that? Randy, seconded by Greg. Discussion further. Terry told us about this, and it's extending the contract. Go ahead.
The only very last brief thing I wanted to mention is that these increases in electricity, natural gas costs were brought to our attention after the budget retreat, so these figures weren't factored in at the time of our budget retreat. They will be factored in by the time we meet again at the end of May.
Can't wait. Ready to vote on this? Those in favor? Any opposed? I'm sorry? I thought Randy moved it and Greg seconded it. Okay, that's unanimous. Anything else, Terry?
Nope.
Thank you for your report. Let's go to facilities. Arel?
Good morning, everyone. That was a good report, Terry. Thank you for that report. I have a few things to share with you. First, I wanted to at least let you know, staffing-wise, we were able to interview and offer a position to an electrician, the only applicant that we had, and he's actually the brother of Ashley Seagard that works at Human Resources. He will be starting Monday, so we're very pleased with that. Aside from that, we still have 2 other vacancies for HVAC systems technician and also for our project manager too. But wanted to at least make the committee aware on our staffing needs. And then also I have a draft report on the Key Bank building condition assessment and evaluation, as well as a preliminary structural for the Red House. So I wasn't sure how the committee wanted to move forward, or if there was something else you wanted to discuss.
Let's work those in a little later in the agenda.
Okay.
But wanted to give you the opportunity for other things in your department.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. I always confuse the downtown with
I understand.
my department.
So are we. Don't feel bad.
As far as other things, Terry had talked about the Green Facilities Phase 1 project. That's moving great. We, with the good weather, we've been advancing very quickly with the geothermal system installation here at the Public Works Department. They are trenching now from the upper visitor parking lot. They've trenched over into the highway vehicle garage to run all the piping for the geothermal system. They've cored through the foundation wall of the vehicle garage, and they've got the manifold inside, so they're moving very quickly. They expect, I just got an email about an hour ago, to repave the visitor parking lot first week in June, and which means that we will be able to turn back the parking lot for staff parking under 3 months. So that they've been moving very quickly. The weather's helped in that, but if any legislators are curious, you can just drive on up here at Bostrick Road and see what they've done so far. The parking lot has 48 wells. The other work that will be starting soon
They
is
didn't find any natural gas, did they, by the way?
Excuse me?
I was just quipping, or I wondered if they'd found natural gas in any of them.
No, but actually, we knew that, but there was, when they had to trench down the little slope from the parking lot to go into the vehicle garage, there is a large buried railroad car that years before, you may remember this, Mike, or not.
No.
Early 60s, when the Public Works Department was initially built, they buried a railroad car for water. So they basically pumped water from a well into this large railroad car, and they would use, it was for non-potable water. So they used it to wash their vehicles. And so when we did the addition back in the 2002 for the Facilities and Highway, the cost to remove that buried railroad car was prohibitive, so we left it in place. But we let the contractor know now that they were trenching for piping that they would encounter this railroad car, which they did. It's about 3.5 feet below grade. Right there alongside that grader, if you've ever been here, that antique yellow grader that is in the lawn area. So that was pretty interesting. I took some pictures of that. But that work is progressing well. The mental health building, the variable refrigerant flow, we've delayed it a little bit because it's going to require a little bit more planning. We had expected to be able to do the work off hours every day, after 5 o'clock, but it's going to require a lot more coordination to the point where we're going to have to be meeting with Frank and his staff and see if we can have a floor a week and basically take over the entire floor for a week, because we're going to have to basically remove all the ceilings, take out the existing heat pumps, which means they'll be out of cooling or heating. And before we had hoped that we could do that one by one in the floor, but we can't. It's too constrained. There's not enough space above the ceiling to do that. So we basically have to take out all the existing units and then place the new units in different areas. So we're going to be preparing a presentation to go over with Frank. They're open to that. They can work remotely for that period of time. That was done when we installed the carpeting in their building about 3 or 4 years ago, where we had to take over a floor per week. So we know it can work. We just need to plan it out very well to present it to the Mental Health Administration group. The library, that is the last of the larger projects. That one, they're still doing some planning. That will not start on site until, right now it's looking at mid-September with the long lead delivery of equipment for that. So those are the large green facilities projects remaining. We've done all the others that I've explained in the past. The public safety building project, they've started some improvements on the exterior of the building, and the hope is that within the next month they'll be able to start work inside the corrections portion of the building, which will be much more disruptive. So that one will require some planning with the sheriff and with the Ray Bunce. And we've got some other smaller projects that we're planning to start in the next month and a half around your complex, some stone and masonry restoration work, some parking lot work at Human Services Building, and here at Bostrick Road. And that's all I can think of for now, if there are any questions.
I had something that came up last night at the Historical Commission. Don't know whether this is your bailiwick or not. Apparently there's not internet access in the historian office in that building. And is that something that we would have installed, Wi-Fi or something like that? Or is that IT, or what would happen for that?
That's a better question for IT. I know that there is internet access, public Wi-Fi. I know in that the first floor, but as far as county network, I know that we have network connectivity for our controls. We're controlling the HVAC systems there, so I know that we have at least network there. But as far as network connectivity for county, staff use, that it would be a better question for Lauren.
All right.
I don't have my
Lisa?
notes. I know Lauren brought this up with me, and so I know it's either they're working on it. I don't have my notes from exactly what the details are on that.
Okay, so that's good. That's on somebody's radar then.
Yeah, actually, that refreshed my memory, actually, when Lisa mentioned that. I wasn't directly involved, but I know that Alan and our maintenance were running cabling to the historian's office. And so for network cabling, so at least that was the infrastructure portion. And then Lauren would know when and if they will be able to get that network connectivity for the historian. But I know that we've already run the cabling for that.
Thank you. Anything else, Randy?
Yeah, Raul, I just wanted to say, it looks like the repairs inside the chambers here to the wall look pretty good.
Yes.
Are you happy with
Yeah.
that? Or, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
The cameras that we put in here, can they be accessed by our public safety people?
They can. I know that Lauren will be able to assist in allowing that. I know that there's been discussion in the countywide safety and security team that meets, and Mike Stitley is a member of that. That has come up in the past, and that's something that we definitely think would be important to have, especially once we look at some type of mass notification system countywide that would assist the dispatchers and the folks up there to be able to bring up cameras in any building. So yeah, those cameras are networked, county networked through the county network. So it would just be receiving access rights to that.
Thank you. And you also, I know you're going to be doing the replacement of the towers or cooling units at the library, and you mentioned they're going to close the library for a few weeks. Is that correct?
Yes, for 2 weeks. It would be closed to the public. Library staff would still be able to be at the building. Most of the work, all of the 6 units are placed over the public area of the library, not really over where the staff works over on the west side, 2nd floor, or east side, 2nd floor. So it's really for safety because we're going to have, and also comfort. We're going to remove all of the units. We're going to bring in a crane to remove all 6 at once, and then place the new ones there and then connect them all. Rather than doing them sequentially, it would save more time if we were able to do them all at once.
You know, how much efficiency will we gain with new units? Do you have any idea with that, or?
I know that it's been discussed. I can't remember. The older I get, all those numbers don't stay in my mind as much as they used to. So, but yes,
I know
those units there are 23 years old now, or 24 years old. So, and we've had failures of all 6 units have 3 compressors, and they've all failed over these years. And so it didn't make sense to keep changing out compressors, as well as the controls or older controls. With the newer controls on the newer units that we're getting, we'll be able to basically control much more and optimize the use of those units at the library than we can now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks. And we'll be picking you up on the other things here, but I wanted to get to the regular departments
Okay.
out front here because we've had so many discussions about downtown. I didn't want them to think they were not considered pretty important. Let's go to airport. Roxanne.
Good morning. I just have a couple of quick items. Working on a small community air service development grant that's due next week. So I've been putting that together with help from, Ithaca Area Economic Development and other individuals, getting information together for that. The RFP for the strategic and business plan, I've received comments back from all of the people I asked for different information on. So I'm finalizing that. That should be going out in the next week. I'll be focusing on that after I get the grant submitted next week. And also, since Shauna has joined the committee today, I wanted to give a shout out to Shauna and Mike Lane for nominating me for the 2023 Distinguished Alumni Award for TC3. I am a recipient of that, so I will be attending the graduation ceremony on May 23rd to receive that. As a side note, my daughter Brittany Noble will be attending with me. I graduated TC3 the same year she graduated high school. So it's kind of a unique situation there. So thank you, Mike and Shauna, for that. I truly appreciate it.
Well deserved.
Thanks.
You get a little, maybe a round of applause for that. Any questions for Roxanne this morning? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jeff Smith. Are you with us, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Anything you'd like to report to us this morning?
I don't have anything.
Okay. We didn't have any items for you, but we thought we'd give you an opportunity to talk to us if you wanted to.
I appreciate it. All good. All good at the highway. Projects are starting. Weather's cooperating. Everything's going well. Thank you.
Right. Any questions for Jeff? Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
So let's go into the downtown facilities discussion. And Arel, you can start out.
Okay, so as I indicated earlier, I've received drafts from both the KeyBank building condition assessment as well as the draft on the Red House structural. So I wasn't sure how the committee wanted me to, which there's any particular order or interest on either one to start with.
Lisa?
I'll also just preface this by saying that these, the results of these studies, we will include in the overall document that the committee has requested, the plan document, so that they can be seen in the context of everything that you're considering.
At this point, they're a working document.
Yes.
Yes.
Your choice. Go ahead with either of them.
Okay, well, let me start with the red house, and then I'll leave the kind of the glitzier presentation, which is the key bank for last. So just to bring the committee up to speed from what we've done so far on the red house, back in November of last year, we did a preliminary, very limited structural assessment of the red house, and the focus was the basement. That was really the part of the building that was in worse condition. And so we shared those results back then. And I think I reviewed them maybe 2-3 months ago again with the committee. And the committee then directed me to do a full structural of the entire building, which we did. And I mean, it's no surprise to me, but really the worst of the structure is still the basement, but we did find, you know, other concerns throughout the building. And so, as I said, we did a structural assessment. Again, we had to get up into the attic to look at the condition of the roof structure, and there was no access to the second floor attic. So there were some delays, and because I just got the report maybe an hour ago, an hour and a half ago, just in the nick of time, but there were some delays because since there was no access to the attic and we really wanted to see the attic, we had to do some asbestos testing to see if either the plaster or the sheetrock was contained asbestos before we cut a hole into it. Fortunately, there was no asbestos there, and so then we were able to open it up late last week and look up into the attic with our structural engineer. And so we found concerns there. And so aside from the basement, what I'm going to show you now is the recommendations very quickly. As I said, this is draft, the format of the final report. Hold on, let me share this with you.
Seems amazing there was no port to get up into that attic.
Right, and we looked everywhere. We popped ceiling tiles everywhere and could not. So, yeah, that surprised me as well. So, is the committee able to see?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this format will be different in the final report. This looks more like just a field report at this point, but I will go to basically the assessment and recommendations. And so basically, based on the visual inspection of many areas in the building, they found that the replacement of all roofing materials would need to be done, including gutters and eaves, removal of the wood decking at the roofs throughout because of just water damage. And also, they're saying a further inspection of the roof rafters would be done, either sistering, which means just putting another rafter alongside the existing ones, or a complete removal. I'll show you pictures after I go through this, but yeah, once you poke your head up in there, I didn't even want to walk up there. I just put my camera, took a few pictures, but it looks pretty creepy, and there's really no light up there. And then also adding vents to the roof to reduce the condensation. I think that's what's caused a lot of deterioration of the roof structure because of just condensation in that space. Also, the front steps, those of you who've gone up, have settled, so that those need to be corrected. And then really the last two points there have to do with the basement. There's just a lot of deterioration, which I've indicated before, which really would require complete removal and replacement of the first floor structure, including any associated foundation changes or upgrades, and some loose stones around the perimeter.
Excuse me, could you just explain that more? I think that's pretty serious. Complete restoration of the first floor structure, what does that mean?
So the basement, basically the structure that's supporting that first floor, when we walked into the building, at least one section as you walked over to the left, that large room, it's sloping. And so I'll show you pictures here shortly, but I've explained before that the joists, a lot of the joists there are dry rotted. Also from this most recent inspection, several are cracked. Several were, they tried to correct it incorrectly. And so the entire basement, the ceiling or the floor for the first floor, we would need to remove all of the joists, all of the girders, all of the beams, and do some also restoration work along the perimeter of the foundation wall. So in essence, there's the cost to just pick and choose what you want to replace is not worth it. It's better off to just replace everything. And you'll have a better idea once you see the pictures, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. It sounded drastic, so I wanted to understand it better.
Yeah, it is drastic. But I think once you look at the pictures, you'll get a better sense. So this is the roof of, right now, of the second floor portion. It's a white EPDM roof, but as I'll show you here shortly, and these are the other roofs. So this, on the right is the roof. There's a back portion addition. This, and here in the lower right-hand corner, there's been already some water intrusion, and this started well before we purchased the building. But it's hard to see, but there's some rippling here along the gutters. There's waves, and so what's happened, the water's got underneath and really started to affect the sheathing below, and it's really starting to rot pretty bad. This here is, on the left, is the roof over the porch, the front porch area, which also is old and would need to be replaced. And then this is that back portion that I indicated where there's water intrusion. You can see right below the gutter here on the right, we had to put white aluminum here just to protect the wood that's exposed, and it's already starting to separate because of this past season of rain and snow. And these are some closer shots. This is on the right is what we put in there to protect it. But it's so bad that there's nothing for us to nail to. You know, the nails we're putting in there, the wood is rotted, and so there's nothing to attach it. And so to fix this correctly, you're gonna have to pull out the entire roof, the sheathing, redo a lot of the rafters themselves. Not worth it in my mind. I think this is pushing to make a decision. If we want to keep it, let's make those improvements. But going through another season is going to, that section is going to fall off. These are the front steps now. You can see settlement from left to right. It's settling on the right side more than the left. And these are some pictures of the foundation wall. On the right side, you can see the cracking there in the stone foundation wall. Also some cracking here on the left on foundation under that porch area. Some missing foundation wall stones here. This is on the south end of the building. This is the only entrance into the basement. I don't know if anyone in this committee except for Ann in the previous committee has been in this space, but you can see the bowed wall here. So that's a note here at the bottom, bowed foundation wall at basement door. So there's been, you can tell just on the left, a lot of water. You see the wood appear, water intrusion from that roof that I talked about earlier that needs to be replaced. Water's gone in behind, and it's really starting to bow and bulge out that foundation wall. And this is now as we're looking into the attic there, second floor that I told you had to make an opening. And so you can see up here the water damage on the decking, and over here on the right is the water damage. And I think only the structural engineer walked up in there. None of us really were willing to or had any interest of walking up into this attic. And then this is the attic of the back portion that I indicated where the roof is really deteriorating. You can see here all of the water damage, and in the years past, the previous owners have tried to do some repairs, but really they did it incorrectly. There's some wood members here running perpendicular to all of this decking here. And then you can see some further deterioration there.
Is that insulation laying there?
Yeah, that's on the bottom. That's just fiberglass insulation that they put on the bottom of that attic. And then here you can see some of the water damage now inside the building on that back portion where the roof is very damaged. The water has been getting into the building. Now this is as we go into the basement. So it'd be the ceiling of the basement or the floor of the first floor. Here you can see all the dry rot. I mean, this is a girder, dry rotting. And these are the sister joists here. So initially when it was built, you had this one joist on the right, and then they did a sister. So they sistered all of these because look, you can just see the condition of the original joists. The problem is that many of these sister joists were done incorrectly. They're not bearing very well on these girders. And that's what they need to do. They're really going to be taking the majority of the load now, rather than that original joist. And then this is what we found when we came back now a few weeks ago. Now, a lot of these joists are cracked, if you can see here. What they did is basically if you've got a 2x10, let's say, joist, really the only portion that's bearing on the girder is the upper maybe 4 inches because they notched it, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. And so what's happened is right just below where it's notched into the girder or perimeter rim joist, it's cracked. And a lot of these are cracked. Here on the right is another cracked one. And so it's not giving really the support that it needs. And that's why, and that first floor left portion as you walk in, that's why it's so sloped, because most of all the joists have cracked and are really giving. They're not really providing adequate support. So there's been some settlement there. These are just other pictures of, rotted wood members, sister joists that were done incorrectly. This one should have been run all the way to the exterior perimeter wall, and it stopped here. It's really not doing much good. And same here. It stopped instead of going all the way to the foundation wall. Here you can see also what they did is if something was in the way, they just notched the joist. Which is not what you're supposed to do. Here, over time, they put additional just beams to support the floor. This was not original here, that's running left to right. A lot of deteriorated piers. These piers were put in, were not original to the building, but were put in over time. 3 of them have deteriorated. These are 2 of them, as you can see. And then they put in the temporary steel supports there in place of the brick piers. And these are, additional repairs that they've done over time, not correctly, but as best as they could. They put a steel beam. This beam here was not original, but it was supposed to go all the way into and pocketed into this foundation wall, and it ended short of it. So instead, they just put a steel column there to support that, and then blocked in some brick to hold up the floor above that. And here on the right, you can see this wood member. It's hard to see, but it's not bearing. There's a gap there. It's not bearing on the stone wall. So those are probably the best pictures to show on the structural. So in essence, it's worse than the initial limited report we did. And that's why I wanted to note that the recommendation that this is occupancy should be prohibited at this time, unless we make, these improvements. Any questions?
Well, you did an estimate of what it would cost to rehab this building into county offices.
Right.
Based on this, will you need to rework that?
Yes. The number that I proposed was a range. It was 1.9 to 2.2 1/4. This would put us at the 2 2 1/4. side of that estimate.
Okay. Any other questions? That was very thorough. Thank you. Thanks to the contractor for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me bring up now the key bank. So the key bank building condition evaluation, which looked at also code improvements that would need to be made, but also building deficiencies if we were to consider occupying it. And so a team of engineers, architects, and our staff walked through the building. Our general maintenance supervisor, as well as our senior HVAC systems technician, and Alan Lockett walked through with, I think, 4 engineers looking at different systems, mechanicals, structurals, architectural, electrical, walked through the building. And the thing is, the building looks nice, but when you take a closer look, you find out that, there are, many serious issues in the building. And so these are just pictures of views around the building. And so, and this is a draft. As I said, they had to really put a lot of things together quickly, and I appreciate Tetra Tech for putting the staff time to do that, to get it ready for a presentation to all of you.
This is labeled confidential draft.
Right.
We're in a public meeting. Is this all right to?
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, basically, once I present this, if there are comments or things that any committee members may want me to change, then we can just do the final draft on this. Right. But no, that's fine. I think this person is new. Well, I've been with them for a little over a year, and so I saw the confidential at the last minute, and it was too late to have it removed. But no, yeah, it's just a draft.
All right, just checking.
So for starters, they basically give a summary of recommendations and costs. So I'm not sure whether to give you the bad news up front, or just show the pictures. But in any case, they listed all of the things that would need to be improved in the building. And so along the left column is it's grouped into general construction, plumbing, electric, and mechanical systems, and they list the items that would need improvement, and then the cost. And so the cost is in descending order from most expensive to the least expensive. And so really the big one is replace the steel window system, which is this system right here. All of that structural steel metal system. It's rusting throughout. There's been inside, they noted a lot of rusting, which is affecting the windows, cracked windows, separated windows. And this type of a structure is problematic because of this it's like an international architectural structure, they call it. And so really the ones of note are that, the thermal bridging for energy, because this is the least energy efficient structure that we would have, is this one, because of all the glazing, and then the thermal bridges, which there is no thermal bridge anymore there. Then replacing the roof. There's a lot of, all the bathrooms are non-ADA compliant. And so we would have to renovate those. And the difficulty is that those bathrooms are wrapped around a concrete wall. So it's not sheetrock where it's easy to renovate. Those of you that walked in, there were, in the building on each end, there were 2 structural curved walls for stairwells, but then they had the bathrooms there. So to modify those, it would be very costly. So what we would have to do is we would convert the existing bathrooms that are really 2-stall or 2-person bathrooms to a single bathroom each that are ADA compliant, and then install a new bathroom on the first floor to meet code for number of bathrooms required in the building. And so that's the bathrooms. We would add a sprinkler system that would be required, replace the roof screening system that is deteriorating structurally, modernize the elevator. The elevator is not ADA compliant, and it also doesn't have the recall for fire recall is a requirement. And since we're a new owner and a new occupancy, we would need to do that. There is no fire alarm system. I've indicated that before, so replacing that. The asphalt parking lot is failed, so we do that. And then the other things are just, lighting, some ceiling systems, some handrail, ADA extensions, some carpeting. Really, these are smaller in cost, and to $500, I think was it. But the total, just construction costs, is at $3.3 million. But then that's just construction. You have to add in your general conditions, 8%, design and construction contingencies at 10%, and your incidentals, which are your soft costs, design, permitting, and all of those things at 20%. And then an escalation for 6 months at 5%, you're up at $4.9 million to make improvements to the Key Bank building. And then basically they give a description of the existing conditions of the building, the type of building. It's an unprotected, non-combustible, 12,500 square feet. And that it's a higher square footage, but they're including the basement, which is a little over 4,500 square feet. And the type of construction. And then basically what they do is they go through each of those deficiencies that were listed with the cost, they go through it. So this is the asphalt. They show pictures and observation recommendation. Trying to get through this. These are ADA related. This is a big one. This is replace that steel window system. Heavy rust at the interior and exterior of it, and it's not energy efficient, a lot of condensation, and about a quarter of the glass along one of the faces is failed. And basically recommendation is replace the existing steel storefront window on the first and second floor with thermally broken aluminum curtain wall system with insulating glass and spandrel glass, and adding operable windows on the first and second floors to reduce sprinkler requirements. So that's $1 million for that. You can see this center photo up, it's cracked. There's been some either settlement because either rust of this structure. So they've had, those of you who've walked around that building over the years, you've seen many instances of crack glazing. They replaced one actually just prior to our site visit that day. It had been boarded up for months. So that's what you would expect to see if we don't deal with this at this point. Here on the far right, you can see where the insulating glass has separated the seal, and so you've had condensation in that. And so you will be seeing a lot more of that if this isn't addressed. This lower left picture is pretty bad of rust, to the point where they made a little channel on the inside that would capture the water condensation to collect the water, almost like a little moat around the perimeter. This is what the address thermal bridging for energy costs. This is that rooftop. There's a screen around the perimeter that's it's deteriorating structurally, so replacing of that. There, you see that. Replace the roof. There's not sufficient insulation, so it doesn't meet the energy code, and then the roof drains aren't sloped correctly, and you can see the ponding water here on the left, and up the upper portion here by the exhaust fans, there's ponding water. And these are smaller, just to replace chimney cap. The access to the roof, those of us that went up under the roof, there's just needs to be some structural support around the perimeter to go up. And these are the bathrooms. The toilet rooms are only on the second floor and not easily accessible. And they're actually opposite corners from where the elevator is. Usually you want them closer to elevators, and they're not. But as you can see on the left, it's a 2-stall you know, there's no way that this is an accessible bathroom, so they would have to basically, you know, modify this to allow accessibility, which would require then adding another bathroom is what we're feeling. Just replacement of acoustical ceiling tiles throughout. It's more cosmetic. The window treatments also replacing all of that. There's a lot of glass, so there's a lot of solar gain, which is going to be tough for cooling the building. So we would need to put in window treatments to cut down on that solar gain. And then just this is all cosmetic paneling removal. Some of it is not well adhered anymore. These are hollow core doors. That's not our standard or solid core doors, so we would replace the 18, I think, doors with solid core doors. I indicated a few months ago that we would replace the carpeting. The carpeting is old and dated, so we'd replace the carpeting. There is no panic hardware in the exit stairwells, which is a code requirement, so we would replace the panic hardware there. Also, this is a code requirement. The handrails, there's supposed to be an extension beyond the top of the upper landing, which we've done in places like the courthouse several years ago, but that's a code requirement. And so this includes those improvements. These are just maintenance things that would be our cost to do, some ceiling perimeter gaps. Modernize the elevator, so it was last inspected in 2017, so there's not been an annual inspection on it, and it doesn't have a phone connection for emergency calling, no emergency recall that returns the elevator to the designated floor, which is the first floor, no venting, no ADA rail. So it has, and the floor, it looks like it could be asbestos. That black floor, it's a 9x9, which is suspect for asbestos. So $180,000 to modernize that elevator and also do improvements to the machine room. That's not rated, fire rated, which it needs to be. Additional fire stopping, some minimal things throughout. Some water penetration in the basement, which is also minor. This is minor, seal some vertical cracks in the basement, but there was no structural concern from those cracks. And then they went into mechanical systems, just some rooftop replacement of exhaust fans there. The original boiler was just abandoned in place. It's not used. When they replaced it with the new units, air handling units, so that this is a cost really to remove the boiler rather than, because the code requires you to really remove things instead of abandoning them in place. And there's some asbestos there above the boiler, so it would need to be abated. And putting in smoke dampers, which are a code requirement throughout. When it goes from different floors, you have to have a damper. And then some exhausts, in the basement for mechanical systems, small cost. Some duct insulation replacement throughout. And then on the plumbing side, the big one really for the plumbing is the sprinkler system. So add a sprinkler system throughout the basement, first and second floor, $225,000. And then backflow preventer, which is minimal on the water service. Extending a house trap, which is the cheapest of all the improvements, $500 for that. And then some pipe insulation throughout the building. It's old. It would need to be replaced. It's not as efficient as it used to be. On the electrical side, it's the lighting, LED lighting throughout, which is what we've done on all our buildings already as part of our green facilities improvement project. These are older either T12s, maybe T8s, but mostly T12s. Replacing accent lighting, replacing your emergency lighting fixtures throughout. Several were tested and weren't working. As you see, they tested it and they didn't light up. And then replace a lot of these, they call them power dog houses that are floor mounted. And many of the offices are unattached and missing. Some plug molds, doing work on a lot of the plugs and outlets throughout. And then the big one on the electrical is really the fire alarm system installation. There is no fire alarm, so there's no way to notify anyone outside the building if there's ever a fire event, which is a requirement in all of our buildings. And that is it for this assessment. I know there was a lot to present. I don't know if there are any questions or want me to go back to any of the sections.
My question would be this. This is a great report, and it sounds like the full cost if we were to make this into a permanently used building. If we wanted to move a department or something in there for 3 to 5 years, for example, would we have to do all of that?
You would have to do a lot of that. I think my concern is that we have said this in the past where we talk about temporary and it's never temporary. I would feel very comfortable without doing some of these major, which are really the big costs. Some of the smaller ones, on this list, probably not. But anything that's either code, energy, or life safety related, we would. So that would include the kind of the window structural system here, the roof and toilet rooms. So it's not ADA compliant. So that's your toilet rooms, your sprinklers, your elevators, your fire alarm. So really if you're looking at trying to bring this number down, it's going to be difficult because if anything, you may maybe trim $1 million off of this, $1.5 million. Because any work in the future, let's say if it does become a more permanent situation, the work is going to be difficult to do when the building is occupied. And in my personal opinion, it's not worth investing this much money in this building. This type of a structure is an energy guzzler. I mean, we were talking, Terry and Johnson Controls a week or more ago, that this type of a building is difficult to make energy efficient. And if we want to, we have to start with that outside perimeter structure, the frame and the windows. So I mean, my recommendation is not investing this much money, but that's not my call.
Randy.
Thanks, Ralph. Probably more information than I needed. So the actual square footage, usable square footage, is about 8,000 square feet. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're looking at about $600 per square foot, if it's going to be $5 million roughly to redo it.
Yeah, and as you can see, this is very conceptual. So we've got contingencies, 10% there. So I mean, I don't expect it to be above that number. I think we can trim it down, but this is extremely preliminary. We haven't done any engineering besides this condition assessment. But yes, but I looked at my notes again. Yeah, the usable is 7,236 square feet.
All right, thank you.
Well, this is a lot of information to digest, and I appreciate your presenting it to us. I think we're going to need to think about it, and we're lacking 2 of our members, of course, of the committee, and we're going to want them to look at it as well. Lisa, did you want to make any comments?
No, not at this time, thanks.
All right. Well, that helps us.
Yeah, so what I was going to do is, since these are drafts, they're going to finalize them, and it'll probably take them a little less than a week to do that, and then I will have those circulated to all the committee members in the legislature.
Yeah, I think the full ledge will need to see it.
Yes.
I don't think the county should buy any more buildings.
I second that.
I was going to say, we really know how to pick them.
Exactly.
Location, 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 huh?
Well, we know we basically bought the land, and it is, and you're right, Greg, it is located.
Then I think that's what we should move forward with, is the land and set aside these buildings. Because, I mean, we're essentially like halfway to the down payment.
Right.
By the time you add all this money up, I mean, we're short. That's
We haven't authorized anything at this point.
I don't think we'll have 8 votes to do any of this remediation work, though. I mean, I think that's the reality that we have to look at as a committee, is what's actually going to, one, is in the best interest, and two, what's actually going to be able to get legislature approval. I mean, I don't see 8 of our colleagues getting behind a $3.5 to $5 million investment on that corner, or a $2.5 to $3 million investment on the Red House. Just don't, not right now.
I think, Lisa, what would help me when you go through your plan is to, obviously, we have space needs now. And as we've talked about, even if we approve a building today, it's probably 3 years before it's done. And so I'd like to know what your temporary solutions are, or if you even need them. Can you wait 3 years? So if you'd help me with that, I appreciate it. And as far as reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about commercial space, and it's becoming super available because of what's going on or did happen. I don't know if that's the case here in Ithaca or not, if there's any space that we could lease temporarily to help offset that, but I'd like to know.
I think the word is that there's available space in the city. I can remember discussions on the legislature with some legislators who were pretty well versed in all this, saying we should never own any building. We should only ever lease. So that's, and then there were legislators who said we should never lease, we should only own. And it's an interesting discussion on that. I think we've done mostly owned, because we don't pay taxes, and it's our building, and we don't have to worry about having to have our leases go up, which has happened some places. So, Lisa, do you want to mention anything about? I know you haven't got to the point of having any draft yet of a plan or anything, but can you just tell us sort of how you're working toward that?
Well, again, we convened the departments that have been supporting this effort: facilities, assessment, planning, the county attorney, and administration, to look at the components that were mentioned at the last special meeting that you're interested in seeing, the kind of the inventory of downtown buildings, the square footage and the status of each building, the costs entailed for improving any of those individual buildings, such as Key Bank and the Red House, et cetera, versus I think an order of magnitude cost estimate for a center of government building. Also looking at the most recent space study conducted by Holt, and doing preliminary estimates of the space needed and where that would be located. So, and trying to attach costs wherever possible to all of this, so you can do cost comparisons. If I missed anything, please let me know, because there were a number of variables. But, and we've gone through, we've compiled a lot of this information. We have it handy, it could be a very lengthy report, but we'll try to summarize and make it able to be navigated with supporting appendices so that you're not overwhelmed. And I think also looking at the options available through a lens of cost, energy efficiency. There were some other factors that we wanted for consideration: space, layout, et cetera.
Thank you. I'm assuming we don't want to take up resolution B, the draft resolution on the legal building. Is that correct? At this point, I know our county attorney has offered to bring in additional legal advice for us, which we would need to do in an executive session at some point. But he's going to need us to cue him in on when we'd like that to happen. So, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I think with both the law building and the bank building, as I'll refer to them, because I can't remember the address off the top of my head. I mean, we're at a decision point. Like, what do we really need to see more? $5 million or $4 million, $3 million for the bank building. Probably a little bit less than that for the law building if we were to rehab them. If we're not going to knock them down and put something in its place to better serve county residents, county staff, and the county, then we need to get rid of them and let somebody else do them and move on. I mean, so I think we really have to make a decision. I feel like we're at a point now where the can is kicked. We've got a lot of information coming our way. And I would hope that in this committee, by the end of summer, we could really have a solid decision made and plan to move forward, especially as we, go into entering the budget process in the fall. So I'm hoping that, this draft resolution would be updated to include the bank building now and not just the law building. And that's when I think I'd be prepared to.
But I do think we're going to need that executive session about the issues involved before we actually.
Yeah, if we think that those are actual issues, I'd hate to spend additional resource for.
So what I'd like to suggest is for our next meeting, we ask Bill Troy to bring in the additional person to talk to us. Does that make sense? Bill, can you hear us? Is that reasonable for you?
Very much so. I can do that.
Thank you. Randy?
Yeah, I agree with Greg. But you need this information to make a decision, right? And to show our constituents that we're focused on making the right decision based on the math. And we do need to get that opinion to make sure that we're doing things correctly. And I'd really like to also see us move ahead with the Red House as well. But I wanted to ask Arel an update on the Baker building, what's going on with that.
Good question, actually. We met yesterday with the two neighbors, the one just north of the Baker Dental building. So you look at when you're doing deconstruction abatement, any neighbors that are within 25 feet of the property. And the only one is Mia Pancalda, which is just north of the Baker Dental building. So we invited her over a week ago. We met at noon, and then Another individual that lived across the street also came over. I notified Rich John over a week ago, let him know that we were doing this. So he basically in the listserv notified kind of the neighborhood that the project was going to be moving forward, not inviting them per se to this meeting, but just letting them know that we were moving forward. So we met, it was our department, so myself, our maintenance supervisor, and our deputy, Alan. We met, had two Tetra Tech engineers, structural and then environmental, and then Mia Pancaldo and Joni, and her address is, I think, 401 or something, North Ithaca. We spent over an hour talking about the process that would be followed for not only the abatement portion, but also the deconstruction portion. Our focus was just making her aware of the precautions and safeties that would be followed as we did both the abatement and deconstruction, that we are basically not doing just the minimum requirement per regulations, but also actually doing more than required, doing more testing, more protection. And I think it was a good meeting. In the end, I think my takeaway was that we're going to put together, aside from the diagram that we shared with the both of them, put together just a one-sheet kind of informational that we would give them again, kind of to summarize what we discussed, but also I will be talking to Rich that he may want to circulate that to neighbors in that neighborhood so they're aware. The plan now is after this meeting, because I wanted to wait to see if there was anything that we were going to be adding after our discussion that may be wanted by the neighbors. There really wasn't, beyond cutting down a tree that turns out it's on our property. We thought she liked the tree because it provides shade to her property, but she requested that we cut it down. So since it is on our property, we will have that tree cut down. So we didn't want to finalize the contract with our contractor till we knew if there were any changes to the scope of work. Now that there's only one minor change, we're going to be finalizing the contract early next week. And then they will do a posting for abatement. There's a 10-day requirement for posting. They do a posting, they give her the posting that she can either put the neighbor on her front door or just have it and notify those, her building counselors lease or rent office space. So she will let her tenants know of that. We will be protecting all the windows that are within 25 feet of our building during the deconstruction. We will be doing daily testing for air quality and notifying her, if there's ever an issue, which there shouldn't be. So we went through all of the procedures for both the abatement, which mostly during abatement, it will be not very apparent to most people that that's going on. Obviously, when we're doing the deconstruction, that will be very apparent to anybody in that area. And so I think it went well. The plan is that we would be starting abatement, would be 10 days after posting. We're looking at posting it mid next week. So abatement would start week after.
Have you issued
2 weeks?
Have you issued the permit for this?
The permit will be issued next week.
By you, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right.
So yeah, it went well. She had thought she had more property than we indicated when we showed the survey map. She said, "Well, who would I talk to if I wanted to buy like a foot more?" I said, "That would not be me." I said, "Start with the rich," but I don't think that the county would be entertaining that. But I did want to let you know that when she realized that areas where she had gardens were county property, she asked what the potential would be to purchase some of that land.
Duly noted. Shauna?
Yeah, I do just want to make the committee aware as well that we did submit the Center of Government for Congressional Spending, and it was moved on to the next level. I think it's the Ways and Means Committee. And right now it's for $10 million was the ask. So it would be incredible.
That would be a great shot in the arm, wouldn't it?
It would be. if we could start the project off with that. They did make the comment to us earlier, though, that they like to be the last $10 million to the project, but I think an infusion of $10 million would kind of spark us to perhaps move a little bit faster, because I think it has to be spent within 2 years. So.
Let's just remember with the airport, we got $10 million, and then I know there were some members of the legislature still weren't happy because we had to borrow some more money.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Shauna, for that. We're about the end of our time. I don't have anything to report on transportation other than what we've already talked about today. Can we take the minutes and we get those done? Randy, you moving them both? Greg, any changes or corrections? Those in favor? Any opposed? Anything else, anyone on the screen that would like to bring up, for example, or anyone here in the committee have anything else before we adjourn? Not seeing anything. Thank you all. Good meeting. We learned a lot today, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.